Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit and the two-sided limit as x approaches 0 of 4 cosecant of x. Each of these involves the limit as x approaches 0 of 4 times the cosecant of x. The first thing to do is try plugging a 0 in for each of the x's. That will give 4 times the cosecant of 0, which will equal 4 times the cosecant of 0 is 1 over the sine of 0, and the sine of 0 is 0. We can multiply the numerators, 4 times 1, which will give a 4 over the 0. The 0 in the denominator is not actually a 0, since x is only approaching 0 here, it never reaches it, but a limit result of a non-zero number divided by 0 is equal to positive infinity or negative infinity, where the sign of the infinity often depends on the side the limit approaches from. We will therefore have to work out each of the one-sided limits separately. We have the left-sided limit indicated by the negative superscript on the 0, and the right-sided limit indicated by the positive superscript on the 0. Let's start with the left-sided limit. The first thing to do is to rewrite the trig function so that we can see what is creating the 0 in the denominator. So this will be 4 times the cosecant of x, which is the same thing as 1 over the sine of x. We can now multiply these together. Multiplying the numerators, 4 times 1 is a 4 over the sine of x. And it's the sine of x that's making 0 in the denominator, because x is approaching 0, sine of 0 is 0. This is the left-sided limit here. The left side of 0 is a negative angle close to 0. On the unit circle, a negative angle close to 0 will be in the negative first quadrant. The negative first quadrant is the same thing as the fourth quadrant for trig values, but it's a negative angle. We're going to look closer at what happens with sine when we're in the negative first quadrant. Well, in the negative first quadrant, just like the fourth quadrant, the sign is a negative number. So it will be a negative, but it will be approaching to a value of 0 as x approaches 0. So we can replace the sine of x with a negative, but approaching to 0, negative 0. The numerator is a positive 4. We can put the positive in. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. A non-zero over 0 is an infinity. And there's the result of the left-sided limit. The right-sided limit will work out in a similar fashion. We'll rewrite cosecant as 1 over sine. We will now multiply the 4 times the 1. And now analyze this a little closer. This is approaching to 0 from the positive side. So it'll be a positive angle and end up in the first quadrant. For this denominator here in the first quadrant, the sign will be a positive, though it is approaching 0, so it can be replaced with a positive 0. The 4 in the numerator is a positive. Positive over positive is positive. Non-zero over 0 is an infinity. And there's the result of the right-sided limit. The two-sided limit depends on the results of the two one-sided limits. They do not match each other here, so the two-sided limit up above will be does not exist. And there's the result of the 3 different limits.